This week on This Week in Blernsball,
All-time greats.
baseball foodies.
Thanks, at Real Ron Howard. I'm going to follow you too.
Wait, was that for real?
Yes, Vin Scully is on Twitter.
Excellent.
Most excellent. Welcome to This Week in Blernsball. My years in the Duke Boys Choir will not have been in vain. I am your co-host, Ben Bloom. With me, as always, is co-host and executive producer, Jacob Morris. And sometimes we just need a little kiff to get the day started.
Kiff's always a good start to the day. It's especially nice to get that lighthearted start to the day when we've had so much bad news in baseball the last week. We lost two greats in the last 7 days. And it's a dark note to start the podcast on, but they've been the big stories, so it's only appropriate to start the podcast on this note. Tom Sever and Lou Brock, both in the last week. That's a rough one for baseball history.
And for those of you who are newer baseball fans or need a quick baseball history lesson, Lou Brock was, if you know Rickey Henderson, think Rickey Henderson's Rickey Henderson. Lou Brock was a base-stealing machine, an all-around exceptional baseball player, two-time World Series champion with the St. Louis Cardinals, and really like one of the icons of the 60s and 70s, particularly the 70s when it comes to great baseball players.
Yeah. And Tom Sever, he was the archetypical power pitcher. He was the franchise for the Mets. I mean, that was his nickname. He was the franchise. And 300 plus game winner. The guy was unstoppable, pitched well into his 40s, and defined what a power pitcher was for the era of the 70s and 80s. And both of them gone far too soon. Now, we know Sever was battling with Lewy body dementia, which is an incredibly aggressive form of dementia. That's a bad thing. And also complications from COVID. Brock's representation hasn't said anything about cause of death yet, but we do know that he had been battling with some pretty aggressive health issues in the past. He lost his leg to diabetes a few years ago. So he had not been in great health. But it's never a good thing to lose this kind of history, this link to the past of the game.
Absolutely. And again, like just a recommendation for all of our fans, like go find some archival clips of either of these guys. They're both Hall of Famers. There's tons of footage of them. I mean, like if you're looking for one of the reasons why the 69 Miracle Mets were the Miracle Mets, Tom Sever. If you're looking at one of the most lopsided, stupid trades in baseball, Brock for Broglio, where the Cubs sent Lou Brock to their rival Cardinals, and that propelled them to a string of late 60s excellence. I mean, it's like you're looking at one of the reason we know the Cardinals as the Cardinals. I mean, of course, Stan Musial was an icon, but those teams with Bob Gibson and Lou Brock, fucking terrifying. They were the Cardinal way comes as much from guys like Lou Brock and Bob Gibson as it does from Stan Musial. Really just otherworldly talents.
Yeah, and there was a great tribute to Tom Sever that the Mets went out and did the night after finding out about his passing. Something that was really noted about Sever because of his delivery, where he dipped so low, his right knee would end up coated in dirt because it was him scraping the mound with his knee on delivery.
Drop and drive.
Drop and drive. He was the original drop and drive guy. So essentially, I think it was all of the Mets that night grabbed some dirt, dug it into their knee, as a way of memorializing this iconic member of the Mets franchise.
And in a bit of cross-sport memorialization, last night, I should say Monday night, during Game 5 of the Boston Celtics-Toronto Raptors series, Celtics All-Star Jason Tatum, who's from St. Louis, wore cardinal baby blue basketball shoes with R.I.P. Lou Brock on them, and then proceeded to dismantle the Raptors. I'm not saying there's a direct correlation or causation, but the Celtics definitely swiped the Raptors bag that night.
Oh, yeah, they definitely did. It's been a great series so far. We're not a basketball podcast, but...
No, we're not.
It has
But can I tell you about the existential crisis I've been going through with this playoff series?
Yeah, it's your team against it's your city against your country. It's Boston against Toronto.
It's so true because, I mean, I grew up on the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson documentaries. My brother went Team Magic. I went Team Bird because we're siblings. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to vociferously disagree. And I fell back in love with the Big Three Celtics. And, I mean, Isaiah Thomas, not the evil Isaiah Thomas, but the nice Isaiah Thomas.
5'11" Isaiah Thomas with 2 A's.
As opposed to, what, 5'12" Isaiah Thomas?
6'1" Isaiah Thomas. Raptors president Isaiah Thomas. That was a weird phase of his career.
New York Knicks president Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and I'm getting text messages being like, what side are you on? I'm like, hiding. I'm just going to hide. I'm not going to, I'm like being like, I've gone 0 LeBron 30 on my basketball social media posting because I'm too tired. In the words of Madeline Kahn impersonating Marlena Dietrich, I'm tired. Face it, I'm tired of being admired. Yes, that's a Blazing Saddles, Destry Rides Again double reference.
That's just so deep cut. So deep
Face
cut.
it, I'm just tired.
He's pooped.
Okay, can that be a meme? Like you've been promising gifts to the people. We need gifts.
We do need gifts. I will make gifts. I promise there will be gifts once I figure out how to make gifts. Yes.
Oh, I actually know how to do that. If you send me a small MP4 clip, I can. Okay, we're getting into pre-production shit. Let's get back to baseball because we're in September. We're into the final month of the regular season.
So and many air quotes.
We might as well be in hypothetical land just with all the stuff that's been going on this year. But we do have a clearer playoff picture.
Yeah. So the American League is finally shaking out. The contenders are separating themselves from the pretenders. Barring a repeat of 1987, it looks like the Blue Jays are in and the Tigers are out, especially with the Jays controlling their own destiny, playing the New York Yankees as of today, as of the time of recording, 9 more times, and blowing up the Yankees shit last night, coming back from being down early and having a 10-run 6th inning to win 12-8. That was a fun...
Yankees lose.
The Yankees lose. That was a fun inning. Bat around, 10 runs. Yeah.
Also, whenever the Yankees give up like a 10-burger like that, you hate to see it.
Oh, so bad.
So upsetting. Yeah, fuck those guys.
Man, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. stole second base. Chonky Boy stole second.
Baby Yoda, what are you doing?
Whenever you see something like that happen, it's just, it's a fun game. It's a good day.
Oh, yeah. And again, in my early season prediction, the White Sox are making fucking noise, man. They are still a fun team to watch. They are, right now they're the top wild card according to Major League Baseball standings, which we can't really trust because it's Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And you've got somehow the trash cans of the baseball world, coming in just behind the Blue Jays in the wild card standings, followed by the Twins and the damn Yankees.
Yep. And, well, the way that these standings are going to work is absurd because, remember, the top 2 in each division have precedence on the top 6 seeds. So the Jays being in second place in the AL East makes them the 5th seed right now. There's potential that the Jays get home field in the first round, playing in Buffalo in that wild card round of the playoffs.
In that little bandbox that might as well be at high altitude because of all the home runs being hit there. And then, of course, we neglected to mention the top 3 teams. The division leaders right now are the Rays, the Clevelands, and the Oakland A's. So right away there, like, you're seeing the revolution of no budget.
We called 2 of the 3 of those in our preseason predictions. We called the A's and the Rays making noise, and I don't think we called Cleveland at all. We kind of wrote Cleveland off.
I called Chicago, and they're close to Cleveland. Yeah. So you're saying it's fun times in Cleveland today?
Fun times in Cleveland today, still Cleveland.
Cleveland. We're not Detroit. We're not Detroit.
Go watch that YouTube video, folks.
Come check out both of their buildings. I've seen both of their buildings. They are phenomenal buildings.
Yeah, it's great Art Deco architecture.
Oh yeah, and great sandwiches. It's a fun city. Besides all the sadness.
Yeah. Hey, they've got gambling now. It's just like Vegas, but cold 10 months a year.
We could do a spoken word of that entire commercial.
Oh, we totally could. But we won't, because that's somebody else's intellectual property, and we respect that shit here.
Absolutely. But what we can talk about is the first place Chicago Cubs. I'm looking at an L Train World Series is in the cards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, it would be played at the ballpark in Arlington in Texas in United States of America, which it's totally called. Look it up.
Formerly Mexico.
Yeah. But a neutral site L Train World Series would be so disappointing. It's a great city. It's got great fans. It's 2 great ballparks, and we'd have none of those.
Have you been to both Chicago parks?
I have not. I've been to Wrigley. Unfortunately, the White Sox were on the road when I was in Chicago. We thought about extending it one day, but then realized that the White Sox were still on the road. It was a lengthy road trip for them. So there wasn't a way to get to whatever it was called at the time. I know it's guaranteed rate now, but
used to be US Cellular, I think, when I went there. Like first time I ever went to Chicago, like I did a tour of Wrigley, but I caught 2 games, the Sox versus the Sox. It was wonderful.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah,
they put like the best like burnt fried onions on their kosher dogs, so automatically.
Oh yeah, the Chicago dogs are the best. That's a finger kiss for those of you not watching the video.
I mean, we could spend this whole episode talking about that, but I think we should mention the NL standings. But we can say food things about each of the NL top 8 teams. What do you say?
Ooh, food things. Let's.
All right. So right now, top of the National League in the NL West, the LA Dodgers.
Dodger Dogs.
Dodger Dogs, and my personal favorite, just at I think it's a Grand Central Market, they have chicharron tacos.
Ooh.
Yeah. Like, knock you through a loop tacos. And, of course, you've seen the mug on previous podcasts, the original Pantry Cafe, right in, I'd say, like, downtown LA, South Central LA-ish, old school diner, doing killer breakfast. You line up around the block, but in an unironic way, because this place is literally older than most of the United States.
Yeah, it's an institution in Los Angeles.
Then you've got second place, the Atlanta Braves. Ontario has good peaches. I hear Georgia does too. Also, pecan pie, second to none.
I mean, the pecan pie would kill me, quite literally. But
yes, it would.
Yes, it would. See, we're learning things about everybody on this podcast today.
Then, of course, third place, Central Division leader, the Chicago Cubs. We talked about, just one of the best food cities in America.
Oh, deep dish pizza, Chicago dogs, Beef on Wreck.
Italian
No, beef. Yeah, Chicago
Italian
beef.
Beef on Weck is Buffalo.
Beef on Wreck is Buffalo. Italian beef is Chicago. I found an
Um,
Italian beef recipe, and now that it's starting to get cold, I am very tempted to make it and just see.
Also, like great smoked fish right on the lake. I mean, you've got like crazy like varieties of food there. I mean, I kind of want to go back to Chicago right now.
I mean, aside from the pandemic.
Well, I mean, what are they going to do? Stop me at the border? Wait, yes.
Yes, that's exactly what they'll do, along with the 18,000 other people they've already stopped at the border.
I thought it was 180,000.
Maybe I'm off by a factor of 10, and if it's 180,000, that's 10 times worse.
Colleagues of mine have written about it. Nicest people in the world. To check them out. But anyway, the wild card, the San Diego Padres, fish taco capital of America, because of course Ensenada is the fish taco capital of the world.
Also, churros.
Dude, love churros. And quick San Diego food story. Years ago, back when the Chargers were still in San Diego, I went to a Chargers game with my dad. During the tailgate, we had massive tri-tip sandwiches, which are, And then we were still hungry because we were gluttons and I had a teenage metabolism. Not anymore. We're like, let's get some tacos. They were this tall.
Oh, boy.
They were like head-sized, but tacos. So the corn tortilla was, of course, normal sized, but the fillings were NFL stadium sized.
Tacos.
Then, of course, the Phillies, another team that I think we had glossed over just because, the gang fails to pull their shit together.
Yeah, everybody go watch It's Always Sunny. Great show. My uncle was in an episode of it.
Oh, shit. No way.
Yeah, so my great uncle, Aubrey, he's pretty great. He's he was an actor. He has since passed. But the episode where Danny DeVito's character has to go to therapist about Froggy Boy, he's the therapist. He tries to catch him with the net. Yeah.
I love Froggy Boy. That's one of the all-time episodes.
Yeah, it is one of the all-time episodes. It's a great episode.
Oh, my God. And, of course, Philadelphia, great food city, not just because of, ice water.
Ice water. Cheesesteaks.
Roast pork sandwiches, anything you can get at, South Market, downtown markets. Tasty cakes that you get at the Wawa. Shout out to my cousins in Philly and Jersey.
Yeah.
Oh, man, just a fun city with terrifying sports fans.
Absolutely terrifying. And terrifying sports mascots.
Gritty. He knows all and sees all. I've been called Gritty because of my overgrown beard.
Did you see the cake that he sent to the NHL playoffs? The Grit Summer cake?
Well, was there like a file in there to bust out of the bubble?
It was. Are you aware of the movie Midsummer?
Yes, it's terrifying.
Yes. Okay. So Gritty in the Midsummer dress.
Almost a literal spit take.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is mortifying.
Yeah, it is mortifying. He sees you when you're sleeping.
Yes, he does. So let's change this topic. The St. Louis Cardinals are doing their Cardinals thing. They seem to always be in contention.
They're always there, man.
And I mean, credit to like our non-tribe member Paul Goldschmidt, but also they just have bits and pieces of everything getting the Cardinal job done. I didn't try toasted raviolis when I was over there. That seems awesome, though.
That's a mistake, and that you did not try that. That is a great food.
Also, Budweiser. It's better than food.
It's Budweiser, but
it's fresh there, dude.
That's fair. It tastes different. It's like when you go to Halifax, you have to have Keith's.
Have to have what?
You have to have Keith's when you're in Halifax.
Oh. There's also other microbreweries in Halifax.
There are plenty of microbreweries in Halifax. It's like the microbrewery capital of Canada. But
oh, absolutely. I mean, shout out to my friends at Garrison, at Propeller, Good Robot Brewing, Tatamagouche Ale, which isn't in Halifax itself. It's, of course, in Tatamagouche.
Tatamagouche, yeah.
Oh, man. All right, let's keep moving down. The San Francisco Giants. Remember how everyone wrote them off this year? Because
they were supposed to be garbage this year, especially with Mad Bum leaving to go to Arizona. But wild season. Anybody can win.
Wild Stallions. And San Francisco, again, one of the iconic food cities of America. You have killer seafood. They put garlic on everything.
Well, I mean, you go to the pier there, and there's just options of glory. Like, you can get anything you want.
Also, American Chinese food invented in San Francisco. Yeah, and they are doing like some incredible food there. I remember I was working there covering the Rugby Sevens World Cup in 2018, and it was at the Giants ballpark, whatever it's named now. And after like 12, 14-hour days, I'd go with some of the other writers just to like a local like microbrewery, and just great food left, right, and center. One of the an awesome town. It's got its shit to deal with, like any town does. But I mean, I'd be back there in a heartbeat.
It's one of the best towns in America.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the darkest timeline Marlins are somehow a playoff team. Not the Rockies, not the Brewers, even if they are technically more deserving because they've actually played games. The Marlins, the Phantom Marlins.
If the Marlins get in, watch out, because the Miami/Florida Marlins have never lost a playoff series ever.
And they are due. I mean, it's been long enough that they've been dormant like cicadas and self-destructing, like if a cicada wore a Derek Jeter jersey.
They'll get in, they'll win, and then they'll blow the whole thing up, as is the Marlins' way.
This is the way.
So, good Star Wars reference.
Thank you. Go watch The Mandalorian, dude. Season 2 is coming out. Also, Cuban food, Miami.
Cuban food, yes. Oh, man.
I think, have we talked enough about food and baseball? I mean, it's going to be a really exciting end of the season. It's going to be unpredictable because there's a decent chance that teams could miss more games. Like if there's another outbreak, and again, I'm not putting anything past it. Like a pennant race, so much as it is, it's such an archaic term, but it's still said with absolute frequency in the baseball vernacular. Any reason why that is?
Because you still hang a flag even if you win the wild card. There's still the pennant for winning the league that you get after winning like 3 playoff series at this point now. And it's still something classic about baseball that you get the pennant.
And I say that with 3 pennants hanging over my shoulder. Oh, and is that my university degree? I'm not going to humble brag. I'll put my shoulder back over it.
As I say, with my university degrees hanging behind the camera.
See, you're embodying Maimonides' ideal. You kick ass, but you don't tell people about it. Me, I'm a bit of an asshole. I got to tell people things.
Exactly. Now, there was an interesting take on the Bubbles on Dan Schulman's podcast this morning. If you don't listen to Swinging a Belt with Dan Schulman, what are you doing? Listen to Dan Schulman's A Swing and a Belt.
Yeah, leave this podcast right now. Go listen to Dan Schulman, A Swing and a Belt.
It is the best baseball podcast out there. Not only does he interview baseball personalities, he interviews personalities that are tangentially related to baseball. Today, he had an infectious disease specialist on. Talking about...
Was it Isaac Bagosh?
No, it was somebody from the University Health Network in Toronto.
I might know them just because I've seen so many names of Zane Chagla.
I don't recall exactly the name.
Michael Sorry, I know a lot of disease specialists. I feel like Bonnie Henry, like Dr. Bonnie Henry, I should say, the provincial officer of health in BC. I feel like she's a secret huge Mariners fan.
I wouldn't put it past her.
She is awesome, so let's give more awesome credit to her where it's due.
Yes. Andrew Morris. Andrew Morris was on the podcast today.
No relation?
No relation, as far as I know.
It's pretty much a Morris family reunion today.
Pretty much. But he was talking about how the plan for the bubble is, it depends really on how they enact this bubble. Is it going to be more like the NBA bubble where they come in and they test heavily and they really control who's in there? Or is it just going to be a bubble in name where they're there, but they just play there? And are they allowed to be out in the city?
It's absolutely going to be a bullshit bubble. I have zero faith in a real bubble.
Well, according to reporting by Jeff Passan, they've been in contact with both the NBA and the NHL about adopting best practices from their bubble scenarios. So, I mean, there are hundreds of millions of dollars tied up in getting the playoffs done. So they really want to make sure that they get these playoffs done correctly. So I wouldn't put it past them that they will bubble hard here.
Bubble hard.
Welcome
to the party, pal.
But something also that came up this past week was Yoan Moncada talking about his recovery from COVID. And he said he hasn't felt right in months.
That tracks with everything we've seen about post-COVID syndrome, about people who even have mild symptoms, like the long haulers who were never, fully hospitalized, but the virus hasn't left their system. It's scary because Yoan Moncada, like, as anyone who has seen him, is like an athlete in like the peak human physical condition. Like Moncada he's the kind of person who, stupid people say, oh, he'll be fine, he'll recover. That's what stupid people say. This is a real disease. In case you haven't been listening to our podcast or public health notices, it affects everyone and it affects people severely. I mean, we talked earlier this year about Freddie Freeman, like with his, 104 Fahrenheit fever. And he said, like, literally, he felt like he was going to die. You have Eduardo Rodriguez, who lost the season and hopefully not much more because of myocarditis related to COVID. It's a slippery fucking slope. It's a serious disease, and you hope Moncada feels better soon because, you hope everyone who gets it feels better soon. Like, it's just awful.
Yeah, it's awful, and the worst part is we don't know much about the long-term effects of it. There's a reason it's a novel virus. It's because we haven't seen it before. A friend of ours, we think, is a long hauler. She didn't get diagnosed with it at any point. She was sick in late January, early February, thought it was a bad flu. This was before COVID was a thing. But now is having all kinds of issues with muscle spasms, extreme fatigue, all of the classic long hauler symptoms. And her doctors think, probably that flu, quote unquote, that you had was a COVID case, and it was just before we knew. And now you're experiencing these long haul symptoms. And this could be something you could be dealing with, in theory, for the rest of your life.
Which is like a terrifying thought to think of. Again, like this, there's not going to be a firm end date to this. And there's going to be lingering effects even when there is a widespread functioning vaccine, because the people who had it will still have the effects. Like this thing isn't going to be written off when the calendar turns. Like there's going to be long-term effects, like primarily for the people who have had it and are still battling it. And again, we've talked throughout this podcast. This podcast has been redolent with, playing baseball amid a serious life-threatening pandemic is not fucking worth it. We love it because we love baseball. We crave it because we're craving something. But again, I'm genuinely worried that something is going to go worse, like later on in this season. And if the bubble's compromised, that'd be horrible. But it's also depressingly plausible.
Now, baseball has done, to their credit, a phenomenal job of ensuring that everything can continue to the best possible scenario. Even when teams have been infected, they have been able to lock it down. They've been able to the best possible outcome, prevent it from spreading between teams. It's been contained within one team, and hopefully the bubble doesn't get compromised. A team within the bubble doesn't get compromised. That's the nightmare scenario. What if you're playing in the LCS and a team gets sick? Do they forfeit the LCS? Because you can't delay the playoffs.
You're playing baseball in November, like...
What if you're playing the World Series? What if it's Game 3 of the World Series and the National League team gets 3 players sick? You got to shut down the World Series, but you shut down the World Series for a week? I mean, you've done it once because there was an earthquake in Oakland in 1989, but...
Yeah, again, like, man, like going somewhat tangential, but I've seen the documentary about that Giants-A's World Series. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. It's one of those, once they get into the bubble, everything has to be airtight, because if it's not, things are going to break bad real fast.
Oh, absolutely. And again, like, not to do too much of a segue, not to do too much of a hard pivot, but there's been a disturbing level of mismanagement of the disease, particularly in the United States. There's been, bad handlings of the disease all around the world, but the U.S. in particular, which brings us to our next section, Go Fucking Vote.
Yeah. So we're returning to Fucking Vote. For those of you that missed last week's podcast or skipped over this segment on last week's podcast, why were you skipping this segment on last week's podcast? It's the most important thing we do. This is a segment where we tell our American listeners the important reasons why they should go vote, regardless of their political stripe. Now, Ben and I, you obviously know our political stripe at this point. If you don't, are you that ignorant?
I mean, and again, let it be said that should they call a Canadian federal election, we will say the same thing. Go fucking vote. And again, if you're listening to this in New Brunswick, they have an election coming up. Go fucking vote.
Yeah, it's very possible there will be a Canadian federal election, because hasn't 2020 been horrible enough? Apparently not.
I don't want to have to deal with more elections, more BS, and even more, Petri dish polling stations.
Oh, God.
Alliteration.
Good alliteration. But today's reason for Go Fucking Vote is because it impacts people around you. A lot of people say, why should I vote? It doesn't affect me. First of all, yes, it fucking does. But second of all, even if you're white, rich, Christian, the absolute most in a bubble, it doesn't affect you. The world goes on around you regardless of who's in power. The people around you get affected by elections. Elections change things. Elections change policies. It affects people that work with you. It affects people that you interact with on a daily basis. It affects, you go to Starbucks, it affects those baristas. You ride transit, it affects the people that operate the transit. It affects things that you interact with every single day. Your doctors, your pharmacists, your employees or your coworkers. Every single person that you interact with, politics affects. And by you choosing to opt out of that, it's similar to last week. You're letting other people impact everyone that's around you. You make your voice heard, and you're helping those people.
Can we just copy paste everything you just said? Because I couldn't have said it better. Like, dude, way to fucking go. That was that. Listen to that. It's basic human dignity. Do you care even an iota about someone outside of yourself? Voting is quite literally the least you can do to show that you want to help not just yourself. Because again, when you help others, you help yourself, which I think is from Sesame Street. I'm not sure.
It sounds like a Sesame Street thing, but if not, that's definitely a Sesame Street morale.
Yeah, and fuck, Sesame Street teaches a lot of lessons. And I didn't mean to go like juvenile, but Sesame Street dealt with some serious shit back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And still does today. And again, like it's really simple. Just pause the podcast, re-listen to what Jacob said, and then pretend it was in my dulcet tones. Go fucking vote. And again, not just at the highest level, everything down from your local comptroller to sheriff's office to state senate, Congress, actual senate, like every level of government. It's not that hard to have your say.
And also, don't feel that you have to vote in every election. If you really feel that there's nobody worthy of your vote in a specific election, you can choose not to vote for that position. A lot of people say, I sat out that election because I didn't feel that there was somebody worthy of my vote. And especially a presidential election, there's a lot of people that say, I sat out the election because I didn't feel that there was somebody worthy of my vote for president. Well, first of all, that's stupid because president affects everything. And it affects the courts. It affects the makeup of the legislative agenda. So you should always vote for president, even if it's just you're voting for the least bad choice. But even if you think that there's absolutely nobody, even the really crazy candidates, the down ballot, vermin supreme type crazy candidates, but vote in the other elections. Vote for Congress. Vote for the Senate. Vote for the comptroller. Vote for the dog catcher. And there are some places where dog catcher is actually an elected position. I am not just trying to be silly here. Because those are the kinds of positions that affect people. Vote for everything you possibly can and make an informed decision about those votes.
It's not that hard to do a little bit of effort to get yourself informed.
And this is part of where advanced balloting, mail-in balloting, really helps. You get your ballot, you lay it out on your kitchen table, you go online, you read up about the platforms for everybody, you make a thoughtful decision, and you say, okay, for Congress, I'm going to vote for candidate X. And then you go on to the next election. You take 5 minutes, you read platforms, you say, for Senate, I'm going to vote for candidate Z. And you could take 45 minutes, you could take an hour, you could do it over the span of a few nights. And then you either seal it up, mail it in, or you take it to the local office and put it in their secured box. You don't have to stamp it if you're concerned about all kinds of shenanigans going on with the post office, which is a whole other story.
That's a whole other thing.
But I think we've secured our John Oliver quota for this episode.
I think so. And just one thing to... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just had a segue. But if you have one more thing.
I do have one more thing. When Homer Simpson said, don't blame me, I voted for Kodos, at least he voted.
Yeah.
So vote fucking Kodos.
Vote Kodos or vote King if you're in favor of slavery. Or you could vote. You could vote for Schnadel if you want there should be a recession. But somebody this podcast is ridiculous.
It is.
But somebody who was an example in the baseball community of really going out there and making a difference, we're going to honor this week. Specifically, Absolutely. If you're listening to this episode on the day it came out, we're going to honor tomorrow, Wednesday, September the 9th, Roberto Clemente Day. Roberto Clemente, one of the all-time greats, both baseball player and person. Lost him way too young, trying to bring a shipment of supplies to his native Puerto Rico after a devastating earthquake. But also a 3,000 hit guy, one of the all-time great Puerto Rican ball players, one of the all-time great ball players, period.
Absolutely. And, like a Pittsburgh Pirates icon, like an absolute hero in Puerto Rico, and one of the first, I should say, like great Hispanic ball players to make a huge impact. I mean, there have been countless others like Minnie Minoso, Juan Marichal. Like you have, like the list goes on of the contributions of Latin American baseball players, and Clemente. Like really, like he left his stamp on the game because of just the absolute incredible vigor which he played the game. Like he was like aggressive on the base paths, aggressive throwing in the outfielder. Like he was someone who you could tell that he was giving every single ounce of his being to, the sport and to his teammates. And yeah, 3,000th hit in his what turned out to be his last game, because like I think he was leaving from Puerto Rico to Nicaragua to bring medical supplies when his plane crashed. And again, lost way too young, like fast tracked into the Hall of Fame, and again, a national icon in Puerto Rico. Here's how it started off, because we've talked a lot about this great human being. Like baseball's humanitarian award is named after him for obvious reason.
Yeah. So every team nominates one player. The list just came out again, day of recording, I believe yesterday or 2 days ago. That is their great person in the community for the Roberto Clemente Award every year. And you read the list, and every single player on it is deserving of this award. It's one of those, if they could give it to everybody, they should give it to everybody. Mm-hmm. But this year, they've taken that extra step in honoring Roberto Clemente Day, where they're allowing, in the vein of Jackie Robinson Day, all Puerto Rican-born players to wear number 21, his number, on Roberto Clemente Day. And the Pittsburgh Pirates are taking it one step further. All of them are going to wear number 21 on September 9th in honor of Roberto Clemente.
And there have been growing calls to make 21 retired league-wide, just like 42 is. Amazing that they're divisible by each other.
Wow, right?
Yeah, and just an iconic number. Like they named a friggin' like the gold, the yellow bridges in Pittsburgh behind the ballpark, the Pirates ballpark. One of them is Roberto Clemente Bridge. He is huge in Pittsburgh, huge in the Puerto Rican community across the United States, the continental U.S., and of course, like the Puerto Rican community in Puerto Rico. If you're looking for someone to follow, not just because, she can articulate, what this means to Puerto Ricans, what this means to Latin Americans, follow Marly Rivera from ESPN. She, in addition to being one of like the stellar, like one of the most like stellar like baseball reporters out there, she'll give you multilingual coverage of everything in baseball. And she's been particularly emphatic about, like what this Roberto Clemente Day means. And, been a huge fan of hers for a long time. No way she's listening to this, because, she has standards and we are substandard. But yeah, this is huge. And again, like there have been growing calls for that league-wide retirement. I'm on board with that. Like
I am absolutely on board with that.
And you've seen Puerto Rican players wearing 21 to honor him, throughout history. And you'll see, today and tomorrow, because some teams aren't actually playing on the calendarized Roberto Clemente Day. I think Yadi Molina, who, of the Molina catching dynasty, he's going to be wearing 21 on Tuesday. And again, like a disciple of the Molina Puerto Rican catching dynasty, Christian Vasquez, he's going to be wearing 21 when the Red Sox play next. And yeah.
There's only 2 player awards that are named for players. And one of them is the Jackie Robinson Rookie of the Year Award. The other one is the Roberto Clemente Community Award. And that really says something about the kind of impacts that these players had. And if Jackie Robinson has his number retired for everybody, then Roberto Clemente should have his number retired for everybody.
Long overdue.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a pretty easy argument to make.
Mm-hmm. Now, this has been a pretty heavy episode. So before we go to our fun parts of the episode, our silly parts of the episode, let's just talk about one little thing that made us smile this week. Vin Scully's on Twitter.
It's time for Dodger Twitter.
Yeah. He's 89 years old?
And he didn't need to go on Twitter. He's good. He's done so much with his voice for baseball over the years that he can just hang out. But he wants to talk about baseball and history and
His garden.
Anything he wants. Yeah. I mean, and there's your beautiful tomato growing over here in the right center field of my garden. I know, it's amazing. It's like having a talented grandparent on Twitter. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. I mean, he's 89 years old. I think we know what could go wrong.
But again, everything we've known and seen about Vince Scully is that it's going to be wholesome and wonderful.
Yes. And with that, let's take this into the silly part of the podcast. It's time for Connery's Corner.
Oh my God. Once again, if you're new to the podcast, what? No? You're just joining us now? We recently introduced a segment where we talk about one of the great actors to appear in terrible movies on a near consistent basis, Sean Connery. He's made some great movies that he's great in, and the movies themselves are great. Last Crusade, Goldfinger. The rest, things get a little silly.
Yeah, so this week we're talking about a movie that is considered by critics to be one of the worst movies ever made.
Didn't we already do League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
We already did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but he's in 2 movies that are considered amongst the worst movies of all time. That is how bad his track record was in the late 90s.
Oof.
It is considered by critics to be amongst the worst movies of all time. It has one of the lowest Rotten Tomatoes scores ever handed out to a wide release film. We're talking about The Avengers. Now, you might be thinking, Jacob, The Avengers was great. Also, I didn't know Sean Connery's in The Avengers. No, we're not talking.
Assemble!
No, we're not talking about Marvel's The Avengers. We're talking about 1998's The Avengers, based on the 1960s British television series, The Avengers. This one had Ralph Fiennes and Uma Thurman in it, and Sean Connery was the bad guy whose plot was controlling the weather with some sort of weather control machine and holding the Earth hostage for it. It was essentially a reverse James Bond movie.
That sounds awful. But with some insanely talented actors. Ralph Fiennes is genuinely terrifying, but also, suave. That's a scary combination. You have Uma Thurman, who literally kicks ass in every movie. You have Jim Broadbent, who is like a phenomenal actor. You have Fiona Shaw. You have Eddie friggin' Izzard. He's hilarious.
Right?
And then Sean Connery.
They're hilarious. Let's not misgender Eddie Izzard.
I'm so sorry. Slip of the tongue, of course. They are incredibly hilarious. And again, you have Sean Connery, August de Winter. Like, I haven't seen the British series. I saw this movie, and I'm like, where's the Hulk? Where's Hawkeye? I would have taken Hawkeye in this movie. Eddie Izzard, if they were playing Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner wouldn't have a job. Just saying. Just saying.
Yeah. All the pieces say that it should be a good movie, but it just didn't know what it wanted to be. Did it want to be a serious action movie? Did it want to be an action comedy? Did it want to be a parody of James Bond? Did it want to be a successor to James Bond? It just didn't know. And in the end, it ended up being
yes
none.
And no.
Yeah.
Oh my God, and people forget about it because it has the name of one of the most successful movies of all time. And there is like minimal Venn diagramming for these movies, even though, yes, I do think that push comes to shove, Sean Connery's Avengers, like Sean Connery instead of Sean Connery as Thanos.
Sean Connery as Thanos.
Yes, I will snap my fingers, destroy the universe.
This does make me smile.
I am inevitable. Yeah, it works. Sean Connery is Thanos.
Yeah.
Also, Sean Connery is Ultron.
Actually, Sean Connery would have been a good choice for Ultron.
There are no strings on me. Although I do like Spader. Spader's pretty dope.
Spader was dope. Spader's really good, but I think Spader was miscast. I mean, I think the whole Age of Ultron was misdone and misused, but Connery would have been a good Ultron.
Oh, Russian Aaron Taylor Johnson. Apparently he's English. Good to know.
Yeah.
Kick-ass.
Yeah.
Sean Connery as Kick-Ass would have been amazing.
Sean Connery as Nick Cage's character in Kick-Ass.
Who?
Big
Moody
Daddy.
Batman? Oh, Big Daddy, that's right. Also, Nick Cage and Sean Connery. A preview for next week's episode, maybe? Because we're tired of doing shitty Sean Connery movies?
Yes, maybe. I'm doing the
so
shifty
again,
eyes.
Yes. Again, if we're giving a score to Avengers, the Sean Connery one, remember, if people on the internet find this out and be like, wow, these guys shat on the Avengers, it's like, no, we're shitting on this Avengers.
The Avengers, 1998.
Yes, just like Captain America 1997, it was garbage. So, I give it 1 1/3 silly walks out of 1,000.
I give it 2.5 poorly mixed martinis out of 12.
Oh man! Apparently, you're supposed to stir martinis instead of shake them. And
Yeah, if you shake martinis, it dilutes them because the ice chips.
And if you stir them, you get a real smack of gin.
Yeah.
Also, gin makes life better. Drink gin.
Gin makes life so much better. This podcast has been brought to you by the Gin Council. Gin, drink it.
It's highly addictive.
It is highly addictive.
And speaking of that Slurm reference, Futurama episode of the week.
Okay, I don't think we picked the same one this week. Do you want to lead?
I will lead. I am going with Assie Come Home.
Nice one.
Yeah, it's one of those pull at your Bender heartstring moments where he's separated from his beloved shiny metal ass.
Nice.
And, Bender's journey to become whole, it hits me right here in my processing unit.
Aw. I'm going with the podcast-inspired episode, Radiorama.
Wait, what? That was an episode?
That was an episode with special guest Chris Hardwick.
What? Okay, what the hell is Radiorama? Was this an actual episode or is this a podcast?
This was an actual episode.
Okay, you're gonna have to explain this to me. Like, I am confused.
All My Circuits is revived as a podcast because Calculon's voice box survived his second death. They have to then, in the secondary plot, they have to destroy a digital sculpture by throwing it on the garbage planet, Junculon 7. When they go to the planet Junculon 7, they accidentally retrieve a being made entirely of podcasts from the 20th century, Klaxon.
Nice.
Klaxon announces his intentions to use Earth as a loudspeaker for all of his podcasts, destroying the planet, and hilarity ensues. They end up destroying... Klaxon ends up merging with Bender's mother, so Bender's mother can talk.
What the fuck was that? First of all, the fact that you used Klaxon as a name, that's like the literal, that's the word for
yeah,
old-timey car horn. What the actual shit? I mean, that is bizarre, and I want it, and where is it? And is it an actual show, or is it a podcast? And I'm in the words of Fry, I'm scare-roused.
It is an episode that is also a podcast.
That just flipped my brain, man.
Right?
Oh, man. Okay. that I think that even for me, I'm like, where am I right now?
Right?
Yeah, I need nice mug cocoa. What? No marshmallows? Dude, I mean, this is me saying this. Where'd you find this?
The Infosphere, the Futurama wiki.
I mean, I love the Infosphere and I love Morbotron. I mean, your gifts are bad and you should feel bad.
It's where I find all the Futurama gifts that we use.
I mean, my head's still spinning, and not because I've been living off of Slurm and Poplars.
Poplars now at Fishy Joe's. Where do they come from? No one knows. You can dip them, you can lick them, you can bite them, you can sniff them. If you promise not to sue us, you can stick one up your nose. I think that was short enough that we won't get sued.
Oh, yeah. We're not going to get sued by Fishy Joe. That shifty bastard.
So on to our classic games of the week. I think we might have picked the same one.
I think so. Would you like to go first?
September 30th, 1972, Pirates, Mets. Roberto Clemente's last regular season game where he got his 3,000th career hit. And his last regular season career hit. Now, he actually added 5 additional hits in the 1972 playoffs, but as we all know, playoff statistics don't count.
Which has always been fascinating to me. And I know they don't count in other sports as well. I guess it's not that fascinating, to be honest. Like, it kind of makes sense.
They're counted as their own separate thing, playoff statistics.
Course. Yeah, like, he's a great playoff performer, and you have definable metrics for that. But yeah, I was going to pick that as well. Also, 1972, a stellar year for sports.
Right? There was a lot of great stuff going on in the early 70s.
72 Dolphins, Summit Series. Fuck, I mean, let's do some time travel. Let's watch some old 70s stuff. I mean, we have to deal with Nixon, but we've dealt with Nixon before.
We know how to defeat Nixon. Quickly, to the Watergate.
Hey, why would Nixon stay at the Watergate? You get a discount if you've been here before.
I'm still pretty sure that's how I found out about the Watergate scandal.
Oh, absolutely. Sell the children to zoos. He's so evil.
They found a way to make him even more evil on Futurama, and that's impressive.
I know. And again, Nixon always wins.
Nice jowls there.
Fuck, that takes a lot of effort.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of this episode. So, as a reminder, part of the AZSE Sports Network, or for those of you who are American, it's AZSE.
Which we don't understand.
So that's a podcast network that's about sports and business podcasts. I'm going to pull a recommendation from the podcasting network so that you can listen to other shows on it, and in turn they will recommend us, because that's kind of how podcasting networks work. So for this week, I'm going to recommend the Andrew Hayes Show. And the reason I'm recommending that is because he's the boss, quite literally. He's the guy.
He's our podcast overlord.
He's our podcast overlord. All hail the podcast overlord. He is the guy who's in charge of the network. He's a sports entrepreneur. He's been in charge of all kinds of different teams and leagues throughout his sports career, and now is taking on a few other things. He's in charge of an esports franchise at the moment, in addition to running his podcast, running this podcast network. Running some stuff with gladiator games. He has a lot of balls in the air.
Yo, hold up. We're bringing back gladiators?
They're bringing back gladiators.
What the shit? Don't
right?
people die? Also lions?
No, not those kinds of gladiators, like American gladiators.
Oh, with the way too tight spandex.
Yeah, with the way too tight spandex.
Equally as disturbing as murdering people with lions.
Yes. He does a lot of stuff. He's also a really great resource that we have to get in touch with other sports stuff. One great thing that he does on his podcast, this is how I actually got in touch with him, is a feature called Free Agent Fridays, where he highlights individuals in the sports industry who have been laid off or furloughed because of the COVID pandemic. He does short interviews with them to promote them and their skills to other listeners who are also in the sports industry, to kind of be like, hey, this person is great and you should consider hiring them when you're hiring because, COVID. And it's an awesome initiative he does to highlight some great people who have fallen on tough times because of, COVID.
And we were able to, have a brief chat with Andrew a couple weeks ago. I believe that podcast is out if you want to listen to him talk about us and be mildly mortified by our weirdness.
Yeah, not just mildly, but he seemed to be interested by our weirdness too.
He was intrigued, but terrified, which that's the reaction we want to go with. Like
scare roused. We go for scare roused.
We want people to be scare roused.
We're also available on pretty much any podcatcher of your choice: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Google Podcasts. What the heck is Google? Spotify, Overcast, Anchor is where we're hosted, so you can listen to us directly through Anchor if you're feeling that. If you listen to podcasts on it, pretty much we're available there. Wherever you listen, give us a good recommendation, a 5-star review if they do that star review system, and just let us know that you're listening. You can also follow us on all kinds of social media. We're at TWI Blernsball on Twitter. We're at TWI Blernsball on Instagram. We're This Week in Blernsball on Facebook. We're This Week in Blernsball on YouTube. And you can email the podcast if you want to email us at twiblernsball@gmail.com. We promise if you tell us not to read it, we won't read it on the podcast. Probably.
And once again, just our routine update. I do not have access to any of the official accounts for good reason.
Yes, for very good reason. That's what happens when you're the executive producer. It's like being the executive delivery boy.
Exactly. It's a title we give to people to make them feel better about themselves.
Yeah. You can also follow Ben and myself on social media. Ben is at Benjamin K. Bloom on Twitter. I'm at JMS Morris on Twitter. I believe they're the same handles on Instagram. Am I right, Ben?
Yes, I decided to go consistent with it because, again, in real life, I'm a boring person. On the podcast, I'm all like...
Yeah. Yay, consistency.
Yay, consistency. You'll see pictures of, dogs, my loved ones, Futurama gifts.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we are. I don't post it all on Instagram, but when I'm posting on Instagram, it's from the TWI Blernsball account. So
that's technically voyeurism.
Ooh, voyeurism.
Doing some voyeurism? Why not Zoidberg?
That's essentially the TWI Blernsball account. Mostly Zoidberg memes.
Mostly Zoidberg memes, and there are always Zoidberg memes for every occasion.
Why not Zoidberg?
Are they on, dudes?
Be excellent to each other.
What, Noah Sandwich?
We really should not be doing Bill and Ted as Zoidberg.
Or should we?
Bill and Ted and Zoidberg, the 4th movie.
Ooh, now that would be a combo. They travel to the year 3000. Whoa. If your Radiorama can exist, Bill and Ted's Planet Express adventure can certainly exist.
Why not? Why not Zoidberg?
Right,
we're getting off topic here. We've definitely broken the podcast. All right.
That's how good podcasting gets done.
So I think we'll call it here. For This Week in Blernsball, I'm Jacob Morris.
I'm Ben Bloom. Thank you so much for joining us.
Farewell from the world of tomorrow. Coming up next week on This Week in Blernsball. Holy shit! Cobra Kai! Cobra Kai! Oh my god!
Cobra fucking Kai! Strike hard, strike fast, no mercy, Cobra Kai!
Ah!